My best friend and I reincarnated as street dogs. Ever since the plane crash, my best friend and I were reincarnated as two stray dogs. I was thrown into an illegal animal fighting arena by a cruel rich man, used as bait for ferocious beasts. My best friend, however, with her adorable appearance, was raised by him as a pet. In the end, I rose from being prey to becoming a gladiator, conquering everything from wolf packs to lion kings. She came to me and asked, "Should we run away? Let's be wild dogs." I told her to wait a little longer, because I still wanted to see when these people would realize that a dog capable of taking down a lion is also strong enough to crush all of them. The echoing barks woke me from my sleep. Opening my eyes, I saw Jane, my close friend, transformed into a short, chubby, white-furred dog. Her fur was ruffled and she was incredibly excited, her tail wagging continuously, her mouth barking incessantly. I couldn't stop laughing. Immediately, she snapped at me, "Stop laughing, you're a dog too." I looked down at myself and exclaimed, "Oh, you're right." She continued, "There are wolves, I saw it, dozens of them tearing human flesh apart." It was a strangely exhilarating sight. Looking around, the architecture resembled an ancient Roman arena, circular, packed with spectators. Cheers echoed, the air thick with bloodlust and savagery. The scene was recreated with vivid realism, yet all around, electronic screens displayed close-ups and betting data. This was truly a manifestation of magical realism. As I was deep in thought, the wolves who hadn't secured food lunged at me and Jane. I quickly pushed her behind me, moving with serpent-like agility, and bit the necks of two wolves, breaking them. The arena fell silent for a few moments before erupting in even more fervent cheers. Those outside the arena let out long whistles. Immediately, the remaining wolf pack rushed in. After a fierce battle, I was forced to eliminate over a dozen wolves. I shielded Jane beneath me, panting as I surveyed the surrounding figures. But then, they aimed tranquilizer guns at us. The situation had become dire. Two loud bangs rang out, and we sank into unconsciousness. When we regained consciousness, we found ourselves trapped in a rather cramped cage. Surrounding us were enclosures holding fierce animals like tigers, leopards, lions, and wolves, all in tight quarters. Most of the creatures showed signs of psychological distress. There were even instances of cannibalism. A nauseating stench of blood and decay permeated the air, creating a somber and deadly atmosphere. If hell on earth existed, this was surely it. Jane softly spoke, "What in the world is this place?" My eyes widened as I replied, "A battlefield, don't overthink it." I maintained my composure, but deep down, I was far from at ease. This place could very well be a fierce war zone between Country Y and Country B. The conflict was prolonged. Specifically, Country Y continuously bombed B. Their targets were civilians, indiscriminately attacking children, girls, boys, and even infants. For Country B, this was a fight for survival. My father, a 19th-generation member of an antique-dealing family, fortunately possessed a national religious relic of Country B, the Soul Stone, over 3,000 years old. A high-ranking official from Country B had once eagerly expressed a desire to acquire this artifact. Legend had it that it could bring the dead back to life for a moment and guide souls to their rightful place. For this land, soaked in fresh blood, it was an immense comfort. My father, being a kind man, decided to donate the item for free. He knew transporting a sacred artifact across borders would be difficult, so he sought assistance from an international humanitarian organization and entrusted me and Jane with its delivery. Unexpectedly, our plane was bombed en route. When we awoke, our souls had entered the bodies of two dogs. I tried to explain to Jane, but she still couldn't comprehend how such a large-scale arena could exist in a war zone. And why were so many rich people gathered to watch? I looked at the dilapidated cage and said, "I have the same question. Even with the war zone in chaos, shouldn't such a large gathering of people fear death? Anyway, what's important now is to find our original bodies and the sacred artifact." I've lived for a very long time and witnessed souls transferring into animals, which usually requires an intermediary object. The sacred artifact has existed for thousands of years. It must be that intermediary. Now I only fear that before we can find a way back, these dog bodies will perish. If the only two senses we currently possess are also lost, things will become incredibly difficult. This task is truly a heavy burden. Carrying so many heavy thoughts throughout the night, the next morning, we were once again dragged into the arena. Besides entertainment, the primary function of this arena was betting. Yesterday, our dog forms taking down a pack of wolves garnered special attention. Today, they wanted us to continue fighting. Fine by me, better to be a gladiator and survive than to be prey. This time, our opponent was a leopard. The moment it appeared, my heart pounded. The beast before us wasn't overly large, but its eyes were bloodshot, and it was unnaturally agitated, clearly having been injected with an overdose of stimulants. I whispered to Jane, "Quickly, climb that iron fence. We can't confront it directly. We can only move quickly and find the right moment to finish it." The confrontation dragged on for nearly an hour, causing the audience to buzz. It was rare to see animals fight a battle of endurance. A tense atmosphere hung heavy, punctuated by loud shouts urging the leopard to quickly dispatch the stupid dog. Too bad for the cheerleaders. I skillfully lured the leopard until it was completely exhausted. When the stimulants wore off, it collapsed to the ground. Just as I was about to rest for a moment, Jane slid down from the wire fence, pressing her ear close to the leopard to listen. I reminded her, "It was overdosed. It definitely won't make it." Jane looked at the animal with pity, then softly said, "Rest in peace." Immediately, I lunged forward and bit the leopard's neck, instantly suffocating it. When we were led back to the basement area, we received our first meal since becoming dogs. They butchered the leopard on the spot and threw us its 2 hind legs. Despite my own reluctance, I advised Jane, "You should eat a little. We don't have better options." But she immediately vomited. She whispered, "You eat it." I frowned and asked, "What did the leopard say to you before it died? Just tell me, I'm not picky about food." She couldn't hold back anymore, letting out a bark before breaking into sobs. "That leopard was tricked into being adopted by someone else," she recounted. "It originally lived in a zoo in Country B, and after the zoo was attacked, the surviving animals waited for a wildlife rescue team to take them. Then, a wealthy individual adopted it from that very organization. Right before its last breath, it was still calling the name of an Arab woman. Nazma, why did you bring me to this place?" But Nazma never had a chance to explain. She just thought giving it to a rich family would ensure it a comfortable and luxurious life. I didn't lose my appetite to that extent. My nature was always calm. However, the owner of this arena had begun to capture my attention. He supposedly lacked no money, so why did he have to resort to deceptive tactics to acquire custody? Was it really necessary to cut costs to that extent? I looked at Jane and said, "Stop crying." Her lips trembled slightly. She replied, "You don't need to console me." I retorted, "It's not that, you have a lot of fur. If you cry, the fur on your face will get matted and there's no water here to wash it. You'll look filthy." While we were talking, Jane suddenly bared her fangs and growled, "That bastard, so it was you." In an instant, the weak girl transformed into a powerful and cunning martial monk. I turned my head and saw several figures approaching from the end of the basement corridor. The first person was a man who looked incredibly familiar. Oh, I truly couldn't stifle my laughter. That person was Ethan, a financial mogul from Country MG, and also a well-known philanthropist. Back then, my father had negotiated with him about delivering relief supplies to Country B. Not only did he agree, but he also enthusiastically organized a humanitarian fundraiser. At the dinner party that evening, he clearly gave a moving speech about humanitarian spirit. Many people, including Jane, shed tears of emotion. If my memory served me right, the funds raised at that event exceeded $100 million. The flight we used was also arranged by him, with a portion of the relief items having been transported earlier. We were supposed to use that flight, under the guise of an international organization, to enter Country B, deliver the sacred artifact, and then safely withdraw. But who could have known the plane would explode? And now, the man hailed as a philanthropist had transformed into a kingpin of deathmatches. Alas, we had been bitterly deceived by him. Ethan clearly led his henchmen to our cage, covering his nose with a handkerchief as if utterly disgusted. Have these 2 creatures been tested yet? The doctor replied, "For now, we've only found them to be ordinary dogs." Immediately after, loud bangs echoed, and we were injected with sedatives again. I was truly sick and tired of these constant anesthetizations. I had lived for millions of years, and the only one who had ever crushed me was a mighty dragon. Jane, right beside me, suddenly collapsed with a thud. I still tried to steady myself on all 4 paws, swaying but refusing to fall. When the trainer reached out his hand, I lunged and bit deep into his arm. Amidst his agonizing screams and roars, I finally closed my eyes in satisfaction. Just before completely losing consciousness, I faintly heard Ethan say, "Indeed, there's a very high chance of winning." When I recovered consciousness, I was being examined by doctors. I was alone, Jane was nowhere to be seen. I felt a pang of worry, but my entire body was still paralyzed, securely fastened to the examination table. Looking around, I saw a doctor in a white coat while Ethan wore a black suit. Under the glaring light, the doctor held a syringe, gently squeezing it, preparing for injection. "You're awake? What an indomitable will." As soon as he finished speaking, a needle plunged deep into my muscle. I thought to myself, damn it, it's a stimulant. Immediately after the injection, I felt as if the blood in my body was boiling. This cursed substance was definitely illegal. The doctor suggested increasing the dosage. Ethan slightly frowned. "At its current weight, it won't be able to handle it." "No problem," the doctor assured. "I guarantee it will survive to enter the arena." With that, he administered another injection. As I began to grow disoriented, Ethan spoke up. "Whether you become bait or a star, it all depends on your performance. Remember to seize this opportunity." I looked straight at him. His face was devoid of emotion, but his eyes were as cold as ice. Though his voice seemed gentle, the end of his sentence concealed a chilling bloodlust. The ironic thing was that many still regarded him as a beacon illuminating the world. The core logic of industry and religious belief were completely antithetical. Religion urged humanity towards goodness, while business exploited, even amplified, the dark corners of human nature. Every commercial leader was a master of psychological manipulation. This passage was excerpted from a draft my father had plagiarized. I was quickly dragged back to the arena. After being injected with an excessive dose of stimulants, not only did I feel hot blood surging through me, but an intense, indescribable urge to kill also arose. The digital screen clearly displayed my opponent today, a lion, and I wasn't the only fighter. At the same time, two voluptuous female gladiators also stepped onto the platform. In the arena, the MC was screaming himself hoarse. "Our dog will certainly create a miracle." But on the electronic screens, the betting money continuously poured towards the lion. The audience seemed to deliberately provoke. The more the MC cheered, the more they bet on the lion winning. The betting money flowed fiercely like a flood. By the time the speed slowed enough to see clearly, the odds had soared to 1/100. The total bet exceeded 10 billion MJ and was still rising. What a bountiful harvest, I thought. While I was still in a daze, I suddenly heard a dog barking from the crowd. I turned my head and saw a pristine white dog next to Ethan, its entire body sparkling with jewels. It was wagging its tail madly towards me. "Ethan, I've successfully infiltrated the enemy's ranks. Just give the order and I'll bite him to death immediately." "Him," referred to Ethan, who was standing right beside her. Her confidence made me unable to hold back a smile. I felt myself calm down a little. At that moment, the opposite lifting platform descended, carrying a colossal Barbary lion. The cheers in the arena erupted, mixed with Jane's curses. "Ethan, you capitalist pig, the rich always have such simple tastes." The Barbary lion, a species extinct in the wild with only about 100 captive individuals worldwide. All were hybrids, weighing over 300 kg, with dense manes symbolizing peak masculine beauty. Thousands of years ago, they were the stars of arenas. What kind of fight should this be? While I was deep in thought, the lion's chain was released. The two female gladiators immediately charged. Amidst the roaring cheers, the fighters delivered vicious blows, moving skillfully and swiftly, but they only lasted a brief minute. A lion suddenly lunged, bit one fighter to death, and began to savagely tear at her body. The audience cheered and laughed excitedly, while the large screen showed close-ups of the bloody scene. The remaining female gladiator seemed to snap back to reality, rushing to the edge of the cage, crying and begging for freedom. Everyone mocked her. Clearly, she had been deceived. Someone must have initially promised her certain victory in this match. But the real winner was the capitalist elite, not her. Just then, I noticed the lion showing signs of difficulty swallowing. Its abdomen convulsed violently. It turned out they had poisoned the dead female gladiator's body. This was a trick used by the capitalists to manipulate betting outcomes. At that very moment, the door to my cage sprang open. Disgusting, hateful, yet I had no choice. The lion, writhing in pain from eating the poisoned meat, frantically charged at the surviving female gladiator. This was a golden opportunity. I crouched and leaped, taking advantage of its charge, slipping beneath its belly and tearing open its lower abdomen. The lion, in pain, lost its balance, crashed into the cage wall, and thrashed madly. It swung its claws wildly, appearing ferocious but actually full of openings. In that instant, everything in my vision seemed to be dyed red with blood. I acted like a calculating and judging machine, but in reality, I had completely lost control to a primal desire to kill. The female gladiator looked at me, wiped away her tears, and shakily picked up a spear to stab the lion. The lion roared, dragging its wound, and lunged. I immediately ducked underneath again, repeating the maneuver several times. Finally, the female gladiator seized the sole opportunity, thrusting her spear into the lion's neck, fresh blood gushing across the arena floor. The valuable lion fell, and the entire arena became completely silent. The female gladiator was covered in blood, fresh red drops dripping from her hair. She slumped to the ground, gasping for breath, then fearfully turned to me, hastily grabbing the spear, ready to defend herself. I stared at her motionless, my gaze icy. Behind me, Jane's barks echoed. I took a deep breath, suppressing the maddening itch in my brain, then turned around just as a syringe filled with anesthetic was plunged into my rear. The last moment that existed in my mind before I passed out was Ethan standing up, bowing respectfully to express gratitude to the spectators. He was thanking the exploited masses who brought him enormous profits. As for those who were exploited, they very stoically accepted their loss without a single complaint. No one knew the absolute fury raging within me. I was continuously injected with stimulants and at the same time constantly sedated. I had become a toy, a pawn in someone else's game. Yet the moment Jane was brought in, I managed to force my eyes open. I was then fixed on an operating table and Ethan placed Jane right beside me. He pronounced, "Stay by your little hero." With that, he turned and left. Jane stared at me, her dog-like face still clearly showing fear. You were really different just now." I softly replied, "That was just a combat state activated to its maximum, but—" I cut her off. "How are you doing?" Jane confessed. "I flattered him to save this lowly life." Honestly, her strangely calm expression made me smile slightly. She recounted that last night, when she woke up, she found herself in Ethan's mansion. He had a mistress lauded as pure and kind, and intended to give Jane to her as a gift because she was prettier than other dogs. But currently, she didn't care about that anymore. "I was terrified. I thought they had harmed you. I know you're very strong, so I don't need to worry." But she was truly in a state of extreme panic, stammering, unable to form words. I interrupted again. "Did you find anything unusual?" She suddenly perked up. "Oh, right, I found our real bodies." She said that while she couldn't confirm it, it seemed they had a specialized laboratory dedicated to researching me. I frowned slightly. In reality, I was not of mortal humankind but an eternal being from ancient times. If humans had a name for it, I was an ancient god. Jane revealed that she had seen a picture of us hanging on the wall in Ethan's house. The photo captured the moment our plane crashed. I had completely transformed, while Jane was cradled safely in my arms. A creature like me, they had never witnessed before. He had met all night with a group of people to discuss how to perform surgery on me. The thought of surgery wasn't frightening to me because my body was in a state of deep sleep with an integrated self-defense mechanism. Except when destroyed by an atomic explosion, no one could do anything to me. However, the troubling thing was that our plane crash had only happened 2 or 3 days prior. Our bodies should still be near the crash site, so how did they end up in Ethan's hands? While I was lost in thought, Jane suddenly nudged me with her nose, exclaiming, "Why are you so hot?" I changed the subject and asked, "Did you see the soul stone anywhere?" Jane paused, then replied succinctly, "No." I immediately told her to go back and look for it. Jane protested, "Why bother? I already know the way. Let's just escape first, live as stray dogs for a while, and then I'll bring you back. The soul stone will definitely still be there." I interrupted her. "If it's already in his house and you have free rein to move around, why escape only to plan on coming back?" Jane was surprised. "What?" I turned away and said bluntly, "Don't always rely on me. Can you try to be a bit more self-reliant?" Before I could say another word, Ethan returned. We had no choice but to stop our conversation there. Jane glanced at me, and her attitude suddenly shifted, becoming genuinely cheerful. "Don't worry, I'll arrange everything." As soon as she finished speaking, she wagged her tail and obediently walked forward. I anticipated she would be a little unhappy, but what other choice did I have? Even deities could die. I had witnessed countless of my kind perish senselessly. Some relentlessly chased the sun until completely exhausted and died. Others hurled themselves against mountains to their demise. Still others, refusing to work, were pierced through the head by arrows. Some even remained immobile for so long that they turned to stone, only to be cleaved in two by their mates with an axe. Therefore, my own death was nothing to be concerned about, but if I died, what would become of Jane? She would still have to take care of everything herself. For that reason, I had to persevere, accepting extreme pain to ensure my consciousness wouldn't be lost. If I couldn't endure, my true body would fall into an eternal slumber. Jane, if lucky enough, might live a happy life as a normal dog. Therefore, I absolutely had to live. Even if the pain tormented me to the point of feeling like I was dying and being resurrected, I had to maintain my lucidity. Next, I became the subject of experiments. I thought they would whip me again as before. But no, a group of experimental medical researchers had acquired ownership of me. They were a team specializing in stimulant research, aiming to prove whether this dog's fighting prowess was innate or due to the effectiveness of their pharmaceuticals. When the blood test results came back, they burst into golden laughter. All indicators are hundreds of times higher than normal. Unbelievable that it's still alive. I squinted, casting a cold, sharp glare. Another person chimed in, "Too bad it's just a dog." As soon as he finished speaking, he grabbed my neck and administered another injection. I growled in pain, turning my head quickly to bite him back, but failed. My mouth was muzzled. Damn it. If I returned alive, these people wouldn't escape death. For several days thereafter, I was in a semi-conscious, hazy state. After endless stimulant injections, I was forced to take sedatives. The experience was indescribable. Only those who had endured it could truly understand. My body felt as if it were on fire, on the verge of shattering, yet it was chained or submerged in sedatives, unable to release the energy. The surging power within me longed to wreak havoc but found no outlet. Every day I heard those hateful medics, after measuring my vitals, exclaim, "Indeed, a good dog." Then they would increase the dosage, unclear what miracle they were expecting. I only knew that the miracle wasn't this dog form, but my own unyielding will. I just wanted to tell them straight. All your research is garbage. Finally, this dog body reached its limit. Even lying motionless, I felt my internal organs bleeding. Yet, I tried my best, only hoping to keep my consciousness from fading. If I gave up, my original body would fall into an eternal slumber. In a semi-conscious state, I felt hands removing the restraints. I turned my head quickly, gathering my last bit of strength to bite. When I opened my eyes again, I found my body significantly lighter. "You're awake, truly an extraordinary physique." I looked up and saw a man in a white lab coat with typical East Asian features. His arm was bandaged exactly where I had bitten him the night before. He mumbled for a long time, recounting that he had falsely reported my death, then took me outside. Under the pretext of an overdose, he didn't let me be used as bait for wild animals, but personally led me away to be buried. Finally, he sighed deeply. "Go on, once you're gone, never come back. With your instincts, you'll surely find food for yourself." With that, he abandoned me amidst the ruins and quietly left. Once free, I began to explore. This was a desolate area after an airstrike, vast and littered with destroyed structures. Only that one circular building looked like a gigantic bunker. This must be where the arena, the laboratories, and Ethan's residence were concentrated. It was still quite early. I needed to wait for nightfall before I could act, so I continued to roam, trying to grasp as much of the terrain as possible. Along the way, I stumbled upon some children scavenging for scrap metal. They were very young, some were just learning to walk, led by older ones. All were local residents, with large, round eyes and long eyelashes, but their faces were smudged with mud. One of them even insisted on sharing a piece of dry bread with me. The older child hesitated a bit, but seeing the younger one's hopeful eyes, reluctantly shared it. I refused, yet I quietly followed them. Walking further, I noticed many refugees camped around this area. No one dared to set up tents, they all hid among the desolate ruins. To some extent, humans were no different from animals. The survival instinct manifested powerfully. They seemed to have sensed that this area was safe, no longer facing bombings. Nevertheless, they dared not show themselves too openly, so most hid during the day, with only a few children venturing out. It truly was a scene of survival in chaotic times. Seeing that they had no intention of attacking me or turning me into food, I lay silently beside them for a while, waiting for nightfall. It wasn't long before I regretted it. A group of children and women kept stroking my head incessantly. I was already very uncomfortable, but a woman holding a small child kept chirping endlessly. Although her voice was mixed with some local dialect, I understood she was instructing her child. This is a dog. In the old days, there used to be a zoo, with tigers, lions, and giraffes. Giraffes have very long necks. All right, look all you want, but please stop petting me. Yet no one stopped. One child even hugged me and slept with me. I had to retract my claws, hide my teeth, and force myself to lie still and endure. Finally, night came and the adults slowly crawled out from the debris. Women and children gradually fell asleep. I planned to sneak away, but a child's hand on me stirred slightly. Then he woke up. "Wah, I want the dog," he cried loudly, making me flee in terror into the darkness. Unbelievable. Even if they'd lost their childhoods, they shouldn't be so blind. Did I look gentle at all? Using the cover of night and strong winds, I returned to the old fortress. Just as I predicted, this place was not merely an arena. The outermost ring was an incredibly thick layer of defense, all soldiers equipped with firearms. However, I still found a gap and slipped inside. The second ring was the animal confinement area and also the gladiators' living quarters. The third ring was the research area. Going deeper would lead to the center of the arena. On the surface, it seemed that way, but the arena's center was not necessarily Ethan's residence. I turned my gaze to the brightly lit research area. The last time I was brought here, I was in a semi-conscious state. Whenever I regained a little awareness, I was immediately bound to the operating table. Opening my eyes, I only saw cold chemicals and a few men in white lab coats. This time, returning, the table that had once bound me still had dangling restraints. I leaped onto the table, then powered on the computer placed there. A giant logo immediately appeared before my eyes. Well, this is interesting. A global leading pharmaceutical corporation, last year with a market value of $168 billion US, and the Ethan family, none other than the controlling shareholder group of this company. They truly had disguised their identities too elaborately. Additionally, I found research files stored on the computer. Their previous project focused on creating a virus. The entire process from development, pathogen dissemination, to the formulation of specific antidotes was carried out by them personally. The test subjects, none other than the local refugees. When I saw the list of ID numbers of the experimental subjects, I just sneered. "Ethan, just how many more terrible things are you hiding?" As I was reviewing the information, the door suddenly burst open. A researcher with blonde hair and blue eyes entered. He then spotted a dog browsing the data and exclaimed, "Damn it!" I subtly smiled, then lunged, biting clean through his femoral artery. In just 1 hour, I had completely cleared out this entire laboratory area. A total of 12 research staff, their bodies lay in a pool of blood. I searched everywhere, finally discovering Victor, the East Asian researcher, hiding under a table. He looked as if he had just faced a demon from hell, trembling as he opened his mouth to plead, "Please, please save my life." I coldly spat out a phone I had just picked up, quickly typed 2 words, and let the voice output. "Shut up." That person's name was Victor. When I was a test subject, I had paid special attention to him. In this group, he was at the lowest rung, always suffering oppression and bullying. Honestly, he deserved that fate. He was the type of person who naively believed in ideals like science for humanity and progressive civilization, only to be tricked and sold into this living hell. Whether he regretted it or not, I didn't know, but I did know that perhaps I had survived because he had reduced the injection dosage, and last night he had even tried to inject me with a hemostatic and metabolism-boosting drug. Although I considered him a criminal, I currently had no other choice. I used my paw to sweep his computer aside. He gasped in fright, "Oh my God." I turned my head and saw a blood-soaked figure dragging himself towards the door. "Help me." Victor frantically rushed to lock the door. He stammered nervously, "You're not going to kill him? Is your biting strength not enough? Oh right, you're just a dog." I gave him a look that was both a smile and not a smile. He could think that, it would be less shocking for him. I typed on the keyboard, "Do you know where Ethan is?" "Is his mistress nearby? Are there any biologists nearby?" He replied, "I know the way, but that path is extremely dangerous. The security forces there are armed soldiers." His mistress was extremely mysterious. No one knew what she looked like. Suddenly, he asked, "You own a dog, don't you?" "Oh, have you met it?" "I examined it 2 days ago. It's healthy and very active, even has diamonds on its fur." I breathed a sigh of relief. He added, "I heard they obtained a special specimen, even summoned top experts to study it." He didn't know more details because he wasn't part of the core team. He guessed I wanted to save Jane. That white dog is surely living very well. I typed, do as I say. I want to force Ethan to personally bring Jane to meet me in the middle of the night. Victor reported the massacre in the laboratory to Ethan. Blood everywhere, corpses strewn about, but Ethan wasn't bothered. He merely dispatched a few senior scientists to investigate. They calmly estimated the compensation money and then asked, "How did you survive?" Victor feigned ignorance. "Oh, well," until he showed them the genetic data. The team leader's face changed dramatically. "What is this?" Victor explained. "It's data from the dog that was tested, but it only existed for a short time before disappearing." They hastily took the data, without giving instructions on how to handle the bodies. Finally, Victor had to clean up by himself. I hid in Victor's room. He walked in while I was examining the drugs on the table. He was using female hormones. I looked at him with a mocking gaze. He had been chemically castrated. The difference was, it was completely voluntary. I typed, "Is the lighthouse still all right?" He was a little embarrassed. He was still curious. "How do you know all this, sir?" I remained silent. He hurriedly reported, "Just as you predicted, they fled as soon as they saw the data. But I can't understand how you could create such strange data, and you even modified the system time. Have dogs evolved to that level now?" I let out a cold snort. That bizarre genetic data belonged to my true body. Ethan was clearly researching my true form. Although they couldn't break through my defenses, they could still collect basic samples. It was certain that the data they collected would be incomplete, with many incomprehensible things. But what I left behind would astonish them. I knew for sure they would go crazy over it. Perhaps wanting to gain favor, Victor boldly asked, "Are you some kind of Anubis god?" I didn't bother to answer, just turned my back and left his room. Anubis, the jackal-headed, human-bodied god in ancient Egyptian religion. From then on, I roamed and committed crimes throughout the building. My sole purpose was to affirm my existence that I was still alive. I went to the animal housing area, eliminating all the veterinarians, trainers, and arena managers who had mistreated me. The method remained the same, tearing arteries, biting through tendons in hands and feet. Next was the area for the gladiators. This time, I acted in broad daylight, right before everyone's eyes. Guards chased me everywhere. I already knew every nook and cranny here by heart, easily dodging bullets and playing a cat-and-mouse game. Along the way, I left a trail of corpses. Therefore, the arena was forced to close that day. Victor said that the building contained a top luxury hotel area, exclusively for VIP guests. On the top floor was a helipad, Ethan's residence. The rich came here for thrills, but today this game couldn't continue. I heard someone say, "Never seen a dog cause this much trouble. So boring. Go call out 2 female gladiators to play." I was hiding in the shadows. After hearing that, I sent them straight to hell. I fought with them until late at night. I knew all the paths, areas, and surveillance camera locations. Corpses lay strewn everywhere. The only regret was that in crowded areas, I had to kill quickly. I couldn't let them die slowly. That went against my preference. That night, I was resting in the corridor when I suddenly heard noise and dog barks echoing. I slowly lifted my head. Finally, they had arrived. Ethan personally brought Jane to find me. He wanted to use my dog friend to lure me out. Without Jane, I might have been able to play cat and mouse for a few more days. He could wait, but the wealthy guests in the hotel could not. I slowly stepped out of the shadows. Under the lights, he led a white dog with fur sparkling with diamonds. Jane barked excitedly at me. This time for sure, I found the soul stone. This scoundrel even said he wants to capture you alive. Immediately, dozens of tranquilizer guns were aimed straight at me. I sneered. Such twisted thinking was easy to recognize. Even if thousands had to die, they wouldn't flinch. They absolutely had to capture me alive. I startled awake with a strange sensation, as if my soul was leaving my body. The moment I opened my eyes, I found myself locked inside a large cage. Before me were Ethan and a group of scientists, but Jane was nowhere to be seen. As soon as I tried to stand firm, a long stick was thrust in, repeatedly striking me. In the cramped space, all I could do was dodge the blows. The man furiously shouted, "Why aren't you showing your ferocity anymore, beast?" The crowd only glanced over, then returned to their own conversations. Amidst my struggle, my leg was sharply pricked, and I let out a desperate cry. The man then gleefully tossed the stick away. Turning to look around, I saw over a dozen transparent glass compartments in the laboratory. Inside them were various human corpses, submerged men, women, and even children. I frowned slightly, unable to help but think, Indeed, this is the highest level laboratory. Finally, I also saw my own body. That body was not submerged but lay on a large bed nearby. The 3-meter-tall figure still maintained the posture of holding Jane from the time of the accident, and it was breathing steadily. Such a violent reaction from my body, the soul stone must be somewhere nearby. Excellent. You despicable wretches, prepare to die. They were now arguing over the results of my sample test, a normal hybrid dog. This immediately plunged the previously excited research team into chaos. One person immediately slapped Victor, yelling, "Are you fabricating data?" Victor looked utterly wronged. How could I dare to falsify it? This is the data Dr. Ishikawa recorded before he died. Ishikawa is dead. What proof is there? Victor tried his best to explain, but he was pushed back against the wall by the whole group. At that moment, Ethan turned his head towards me, still trapped in the cage. He spoke up. A creature capable of slaughtering many lives yet remaining so calm cannot simply be an ordinary dog. The entire group fell silent. Ethan's voice became colder. If so, proceed with the dissection immediately. Use muscle relaxants in a limited capacity. Let's see if it can reveal any hidden abilities. Victor cried out in panic. Even if you get the data that way, it'll be dead. Ethan remained expressionless and said, if it's a dog, no matter its potential, its limits are very low. Its greatest value is its contribution to science. Victor was speechless. A man in a white lab coat nearby lightly kicked Victor, saying, hurry up, go prepare all its old experimental data. If you hadn't participated, do you think getting into this top-tier research team would be easy? Finally, Victor glanced at me, sighed softly, then slowly walked out of the room. However, at that very moment, the situation unexpectedly reversed. Just as he reached the doorway, he suddenly turned around, reaching into his breast pocket and pulling out a pistol. A panicked shout rang out, "What are you doing?" I was completely stunned. Victor didn't hesitate, he pulled the trigger. Several successive shots caused a group of people to fall. Ethan quickly grabbed another person as a human shield, his face still calm, slowly approaching. When Victor ran out of bullets, Ethan swung his fist, knocking him to the floor. Useless! I still couldn't activate my main body. I could only sit helplessly in the cage, witnessing the entire event. Ethan pinned Victor to the floor, continuously landing rapid punches on him, then ordered the armed security team to be called. Victor was kicked and tossed around like a ball. He screamed, "If you're so good, just kill me. I have no desire to live anymore." Ethan sneered, "You're a Chinese spy, aren't you?" Victor frothed at the mouth. "I have no idea what you're talking about. You guys lured me here. You are dirty beasts with hands stained by countless lives. I despise you too much to cooperate with you." However, Ethan showed no anger. Instead, he became even more confident in his conjecture. "It's abnormal for trash like you to get into this research center. You must be planning to eliminate us all and leak data back to your country, right?" He stepped on Victor's face with his foot. "But there's one thing I wonder. How do you plan to escape?" I furrowed my brow. Indeed, data could be transmitted over the internet, but how would he himself escape? Victor didn't answer, lying motionless like a corpse. "Even dead, he's useless anyway," Ethan said, turning to his staff to call someone to inject a virus sample. He intended to use Victor's name to transfer this virus to China, declaring it a new vaccine. Victor's eyes turned bloodshot. "Ethan, you truly are a beast." Immediately, the guards kicked him twice violently, as if trying to kill him. Ethan raised his hand, signaling them to stop. "No, he is one of our most ingeniously hidden masterpieces. I want you to witness with your own eyes yourself becoming an eternal traitor to your nation. When the virus breaks out from China itself, while the vaccine is produced by our hands, your entire country will suffer curses because of your actions." Amidst Victor's screams, I slowly opened my eyes wide. This was my true body. Jane was still safely asleep in my arms. No one paid attention to our presence. Two scientists stood before computer screens, cheerfully copying data and chatting. Victor continued to curse, uttering only words like "heartless." His curses grew increasingly desperate, making onlookers merely find it amusing. I slowly stood up. The two scientific experts stood dumbfounded. I offered a warm smile, then approached and used both hands to crush their heads. Loud, piercing pops echoed, brains splattering everywhere. The scene was truly grotesquely poetic. The laboratory immediately descended into chaos. Security personnel began firing relentlessly. Alas, this was my true form. Bullets striking me were no more than mere scratches. Ethan cried out in alarm, "What in the world are you?" I subtly lowered my face and calmly asked, "Haven't you been yearning for me all this time?" Ethan froze for a moment, then quickly reverted to the demeanor of a businessman. Are you an extraordinary being? It's all right, I can completely provide for you, grant you special privileges in human society. I chuckled, then pounced on a security guard, tearing him apart right before Ethan's eyes. Horrified screams mingled with fresh blood splashing all over the room. The remaining people in the room screamed in terror and fled in panic, with Ethan being the fastest. He bolted out the door and immediately locked it. I heard a series of gunshots echoing behind me, feeling utterly annoyed, so I threw 2 more punches, making 2 other heads explode. In just a short while, bodies lay strewn everywhere. Some had breathed their last, the rest groaned in agony. Victor trembled violently as he looked at me, stammering, Sir, who are you? Who am I? It's hard to put into words. I simply replied, like you, I am from China. Victor almost went mad, screaming, I've never seen a dog like you, sir. Then he suddenly remembered Ethan had escaped. No, this cannot be. You must chase him, sir. If that man gets away, things will be very bad. I intentionally provoked him. What's so bad? He snapped back. Don't you see, sir? He is a notorious war profiteer. All the money he earns is invested in the weapons industry in country Y, and he even uses refugees from country B as test subjects for his virus. He truly is a disaster. As I pondered, he suddenly burst into sobs. I beg you, sir, if he continues, not just Earth, but all living beings on this planet will face catastrophe. I lowered myself, searched his body, and as expected, I found the blood-stained soul stone. He was completely unaware, even started singing, You and I sharing a heartbeat, living in harmony in a global village. I slapped him and immediately said, Stop spouting such nonsense. He instantly fell silent. I wondered why this stone was in his hands. I had actually thought it would be found in the laboratory. He was extremely surprised. A white dog gave it to me. Huh, Jane. Interesting, he continued. Perhaps you don't know that white dog, but it has a best friend, an incredibly formidable black dog. I asked him to stop talking. Are you really a spy? He bowed his head slightly, confirming, I am from China. A few years ago, a major pandemic broke out without warning. Initially, the authorities were hesitant to react, but then it became clear that someone had researched and created the virus, then released it and profited immensely from selling vaccines. At first, everyone thought this had nothing to do with the state apparatus, but was merely the action of immoral capitalists. After completing his studies abroad, Victor joined the globally renowned MJ Pharmaceutical Corporation, citing admiration for its leader. The deeper the investigation, the more chilling the truth became. They owned many laboratories scattered across the globe. What exactly they researched, I personally wasn't entirely clear on. I looked down at the man. You were chemically castrated, weren't you? Victor looked flustered. I was just forced to test drugs. You don't regret being pressured at work? It's because my EQ is poor. Those who are good at fawning have infiltrated deep into the system a long time ago. As for me, I struggled greatly just to get an opportunity like this, which is tonight. I heard urgent knocking at the door. Security forces had arrived. Victor frantically crawled towards the computer. No, this cannot be. I need to transmit this top-secret information back to my homeland. I stood up straight. It's up to you. I locked the door, trapping Victor and Jane inside the room. Next, I completely sealed off all exits of the entire high-rise building and began the slaughter. I wasn't joking. I had warned them before all of them must die. Initially, I used my bare hands for execution, but then I found a machine gun, greatly increasing my efficiency. Immediately after, I climbed to the top floor. As predicted, I saw a helicopter landing pad on the roof of the building, not too far away. The wealthy elite had gathered there in full force. I chose a perfect spot and waited quietly. When the first helicopter began to ascend into the air, I shot its rotating rotor, the most critical weakness of this new generation of aircraft. Adding a few more shots to its landing gear, the helicopter lost balance and plunged straight to the ground. Horrified screams echoed, tearing through the night. Under the golden glow of the full moon, I clearly saw the entire scene. The wealthy group in their luxurious attire frantically scattered across the rooftop. The scene was exactly like a mad, final party. I understood why humans were so fascinated by death matches between animals. Watching others struggle for survival was truly captivating. Seeing that I made no further moves, they pushed and shoved each other onto the next helicopter. I smirked, then shot and shredded the landing gear of several of them. Those helicopters flipped over, crashed into each other, and exploded. Flames erupted fiercely. The men and women on the rooftop grew even more panicked, scattering further. I looked down and saw Ethan standing on the railing, his face pale, eyes full of despair, then he buckled and collapsed. That was no surprise. That group of people were all important guests with close business ties to his family. He couldn't endure these repercussions. I raised my gun and fired a shot that grazed his foot. He immediately spun around and fled for his life. I only stopped shooting when he had completely vanished from sight. Holstering my gun, I smiled slightly and quickly gave chase. This game of cat and mouse truly amused me. Was no one else entertained? Even Ethan seemed pleased. I maintained a secret distance, tracking him through the complex, maze-like architecture. Whenever I saw someone accompanying him, I aimed and shot that person down. He continued to scream in horror and flee. Until exhausted, he collapsed, then screamed, "What sin have I committed to make you hate me so much? I was the one who saved you from the explosion. I was the one who brought you back to life." How ridiculous. He still hadn't realized my true identity. He screamed madly, promising to bestow upon me money, status, and everything he owned. "Do you know how rich I am? I can even buy an entire country. Where are you, you bastard? Show yourself." He was exhausted, but when he saw I was still silent, he struggled to his feet and tried to escape. I let him tumble down the stairs. Finally, he was about to reach his ultimate hiding place. I truly couldn't believe that beneath this structure lay a massive underground architectural complex. As soon as I stepped inside, I felt completely isolated from the outside world, and before me was a babbling underground stream. However, this place had undergone extremely careful renovation. Bright lights shone everywhere, and both sides of the stream were lined with various flowers capable of growing underground, like a faint path leading to paradise. My true body was originally too massive, making movement in such cramped spaces a bit inconvenient. Therefore, I transformed back into a human, slung the gun over my shoulder, and stepped in. Before me was a large gate, like the entrance to a luxurious mansion. At that very moment, the door suddenly burst open, and Ethan hastily rushed out, still carrying a gun. Seeing me, his eyes showed a complex expression as he exclaimed, "It's you." I smiled faintly. "We met at the charity gala once. It seems you defrauded my family of a considerable sum of money, didn't you?" I was quite surprised to see no other bodyguards, only he appeared to confront me. I blurted out, "Hiding a mistress in a secret bunker? Are you playing the pure love game?" He immediately changed color, silent for a moment, then sighed. "If you can integrate into society so well, I think we can negotiate. I know you need an official identity to hide. Actually, I'm a better fit than the Zia family." I raised an eyebrow. "Stop it, you're disgusting." He stared at me. "Then why don't you kill me immediately? Be honest, deep down you want to negotiate with me." I laughed. I had to admit the psychology of these powerful elites was truly resilient, close to death yet still speaking eloquently, always believing they could sway others to their will. He said, "What happened before was my fault. I can compensate you." Immediately, I shot his left leg to pieces. "Ah," he cursed, "what do you want?" I replied, "You may not know, but I was once turned into a dog." He froze, then looked at me with a horrified expression. I slowly approached. "Do you think there's anything left to say? Surely not. You threw me into an arena for experiments and even planned to dissect me alive for research. Do you know, the one who once injured me was a dragon. It only managed to pull out a few strands of my hair. I, in turn, stripped half its scales." I raised the gun and pointed it directly at him. I hold grudges for a very long time. Bang, 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 I shot all 4 of his limbs. Then I threw the gun down and moved closer. I had to admit, he was very tough, enduring such injuries without a single whimper. I glanced at the door behind him and whispered, "Is there someone important to you behind there?" I pulled a series of syringes from my jacket pocket. "I don't know how many types of viruses you've researched." "Well then, 5 shots for you, 5 for your lover." He looked at me in horror. "Those are incomplete samples, but then you are a sample too." His limbs couldn't move, he could only watch helplessly as I injected the virus into him. "They say the infectivity is very strong. Your research, after all, always reaches world-class levels." At this moment, a white dog ran out from inside the house. Following it was a thin, sickly man. Oh, this was Ethan's mistress. Ethan shouted, "Isa. Run quickly, Jane." Woof, 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 self-delusional woof, woof, woof. But the man coldly walked forward, his eyes looking at something dirty. Ethan was stunned. Isa looked at him with disdain and contempt. "The only thing I regret is not personally ending your life." Ethan was astonished, then cursed loudly, "You wretched bitch, I saved you. If it weren't for me, you would have been completely destroyed by others." Truly captivating. Love, hatred, resentment, and infatuation all are earthly sufferings. I took Jane to swap bodies. The person named Isa personally surgically removed the bullets from Ethan without using any anesthetic. He was a medical student who had just returned home when the company he intended to work for was bombed and destroyed. Then he met Ethan, who claimed to be a philanthropist, and became his personal toy. This seemingly innocent game had enchanted him, and then he developed genuine feelings. At this moment, Ethan looked at Isa with eyes full of despair. "Is that so?" "Haven't I treated you well enough?" Isa calmly replied. "I didn't kill you simply because I haven't found a way to completely eliminate you. I know every one of your lies, and I even understand the true nature of that dog." He lowered his head and said, "You're not as clever as you think you are. You're just a little more confident than ordinary people." For some unknown reason, this statement struck Ethan's weak point. He screamed on the operating table like a madman. Isa merely sneered and continued to operate on his body. "What is this called? Only those who have loved can know how to inflict fatal wounds. We released all the wild animals held in the manor. Victor drove a truck, taking them to a desolate wilderness. Next, we allowed the gladiators and the volunteer test subjects inside to completely destroy the fortress. Outside, refugees queued patiently, waiting to receive relief supplies. They didn't question the origin of the goods, nor did they ask what was happening inside the building. They simply waited quietly, then politely left. The only special case was the female gladiator who had once fought the lion with me. She reunited with the child who had once insisted on hugging me to sleep. Both embraced, crying profusely. All the withdrawable money in Ethan's accounts, the funds generated from recent casino transactions, I donated to the local government. I threw Ethan into the center of the arena. Farewell to him. He began to convulse, his face pale, sweat pouring off him. "What in the world do you want?" I chuckled. At that moment, Isa approached and said, "Mrs. Zia has disabled all information systems of this base, enhanced security for the exits, and only kept the pathogens. She's far more intelligent than you." For some unknown reason, such words caused deep emotional damage to Ethan. "You will forever be imprisoned here, infecting each other until you die. You yourselves once personally created a living hell for refugees and countless animals. Now Mrs. Zia is simply returning to you a similar world of imprisonment. Feel free to enjoy it." Ethan, with trembling lips, asked, "Then Isa, what about you?" Isa looked up at the sky. "Mrs. Zia successfully repaired an aircraft." "That's right, she even has the ability to repair aircraft." Isa said, "I will take medicines and head to the front lines." We then left that place. The fortunate survivors, those whose lives I hadn't taken, now dared to furtively emerge from the base's nooks and crannies. They viewed Ethan as their only beacon, hastily surging towards him. After bidding farewell to Isa, Victor decided to return to his homeland with our group. During the flight, I asked him, "Did you collect the data?" Victor quickly replied, "It's all collected, everything is very complete." As I was about to say something more, he suddenly raised his hand in a solemn military salute. "Thank you, both of you. Rest assured, that land, after all, is just a virus outbreak with no way to reverse it." I remained silent for a moment, then asked, "Is there a possibility for your chemical castration to recover?" Jane exclaimed in surprise. "Huh." Victor looked flustered. "That's something we don't need to discuss anymore." How ironic. The humanitarian aid flight we used to arrive was blown up, but the private jet of the financial elites safely escaped the war zone. Afterward, we contacted the embassy for assistance, went through many procedures, and finally returned to China. As soon as I arrived at my home, my father rushed out, shouting, "Good heavens, why are you back?" I replied, "Oh, am I not allowed to come back?" He said, "I thought you two had been in a plane crash. Calls couldn't connect, messages got no reply. I even hired mercenaries to rescue you." I asked, surprised, "Did you think something would happen to me, Dad? What a kind of magical realism." He said, "What if you got carried away and got involved in human wars? Even many gods, who are usually hard to kill, have perished when entangled in human conflicts." I laughed aloud. "Dad, have you forgotten where you found me?" It must be clarified that he was not my biological father but my adoptive father. Many years ago, during an excavation in an ancient battlefield area, he found me when I was still a baby with a degenerated form. Since that event, I had come to appreciate a saying passed down in my family even more. Absolutely do not interfere in human conflicts, otherwise, you will face unpredictable calamities. War, whether desired or not, remains an unavoidable aspect of human history's development. There exist lower civilizations that even gods cannot destroy. Only humans themselves are capable of eliminating them. After entrusting Jane to my father for guidance, I immediately immersed myself in warm water. While relaxing and contemplating in the tub, Jane unexpectedly walked in quietly. She rested her chin on the edge of the tub, her eyes fixed on me. I softly asked, "Is something wrong?" She asked. "Am I bothering you by being so weak? How do I need to train to become stronger?" Ah, right. I suddenly realized I still had an unresolved issue.